When Sergeant Maria Lawson stepped into the wealthy Virginia school, every gaze followed, but not with respect, with judgment. Her uniform wasn't just fabric, it was history, sacrifice, and silent stories that none of them understood. Her son Ethan shrank beneath the weight of classmates who mocked what they couldn't comprehend. But Maria had not survived war to bow to whispers, and when her medals came into view, so did the truth. Something happened in that polished office that none of them would ever forget. Maria Lawson stepped through the gleaming glass doors of Hartfield Academy, a school where private jets were as casually referenced as family cars. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, illuminating spotless marble floors and the meticulously polished school crest. Her combat boots clicked against the tile, out of rhythm with the soft designer shoes worn by the other parents. Some heads turned politely, others turned pointedly, and a few simply stared, as if they were witnessing a stranger trespassing in a sanctuary of wealth. Her uniform was pressed, ribbons aligned with flawless precision, medals resting with silent significance. Still, even someone unfamiliar with the hierarchy could see she had earned every piece. Maria felt the familiar sensation of being observed, categorized, and silently judged. But she let it roll off her like rain on steel. She was here for one purpose: to pick up her son. Across the courtyard windows, she spotted Ethan with his classmates, and her heart compressed. The boy she once carried on her shoulders through muddy training grounds in Texas now stood small, shoulders drawn inward, head lowered as three boys laughed. Their clothing screamed wealth, tailored jackets and name-brand sneakers, while Ethan's second-hand backpack and plain shirt seemed to betray his difference in socioeconomic gravity. He saw his mother through the glass and immediately stiffened, not with pride, but with discomfort. Maria felt it. She understood it. She had feared this moment. "Excuse me, ma'am. Can I help you?" a voice interjected. Maria turned to find Principal Halbrook, a thin man with an expensive watch and carefully groomed smile. The smile faltered slightly as he saw her uniform, but he recovered with a courteous expression. "I'm here for my son, Ethan Lawson," she said calmly. Halbrook blinked slowly. "Ah, yes, Ethan. I was instead aware his guardian would be arriving today." "Mother," Maria corrected gently, though her tone carried firmness. "Of course. My mistake," he said, though his eyes betrayed surprise. A mother nearby, blonde, diamonds glistening from her ears, leaned toward another and whispered audibly, "I didn't know they let people like that in here." Maria pretended not to hear. The whisper might as well have been shouted. She signed in and waited, watching Ethan through the window. One of the boys nudged him and said something. Ethan's cheeks reddened. He didn't look up. He didn't wave. Maria swallowed. A school administrator hurried over. "Sergeant Lawson, would you mind waiting in the office? Ethan will be brought to you shortly." She followed them down the hallway, decorated with paintings of alumni who were now CEOs, senators, philanthropists, a lineage of inherited success. Maria felt something heavy inside her, not resentment, but realization. Ethan lived in a different world inside these walls, a world where accomplishment came pre-packaged. In the office, she sat in a leather chair that felt like it had never known someone in uniform. Halbrook entered behind a mahogany desk and cleared his throat. "I wanted to speak with you privately, actually," he began. Maria looked up, unmoving. "Yes. It's Seppens, about Ethan Seppens. Social integration." The principal folded his hands. "Some of our students have expressed discomfort with certain aspects of Ethan Seppens' background." Maria understood the coded language immediately. "You mean the fact that his family isn't set wealthy?" Halbrook blinked again. "I wouldn't phrase it that way." Maria leaned forward, voice quiet, "But you meant it." Before he could respond, the door opened. Ethan stepped in. His eyes flicked from his mother to the principal, then to the medals on her uniform, the ones she had worn only twice to school functions before. He looked pained. "Mom, did you have to wear that today?" he murmured. The words cut deeper than any battlefield injury. Holbrook shifted, sensing opportunity. "Ethan sometimes tells classmates about your military stories. They may interpret them incorrectly." Maria turned to Ethan. "Is that what Sep's happening?" Ethan didn't answer. Holbrook continued gently. "Some of our families are uncomfortable, exposing their children to discussions of violence and warfare. We pride ourselves on providing a peaceful environment." Maria inhaled slowly. "I didn't bring war stories here, but Ethan asked about courage and sacrifice. I told him the truth." Holbrook smiled tightly. "Of course, but perhaps we might encourage more appropriate topics in the future." Maria stood. The chair groaned beneath the shift. She reached up and unclipped one of the medals, a Distinguished Service Medal, and laid it on the principal's desk. "That is not about war," she said. "That is about pulling families out of collapsed buildings following an embassy attack, including children." The principal's throat bobbed. He stared at the medal, raw proof of what words could not convey. Maria then removed another, a Purple Heart. She placed it beside the first. "And this? This was earned because I shielded a civilian aid worker with my own body when we came under fire." Holbrook's face drained of color. The blonde mother and another woman had gravitated toward the open doorway, and now both stared transfixed. Maria wasn't raising her voice. She didn't have to. She looked at Ethan, eyes softening. "I wore the uniform today because I wanted you to remember who you are, not who others think you should be." Ethan Seck's eyes shined, conflicted and fragile. But before the moment could settle, a man in a dark federal suit stepped into the doorway. His expression was urgent. "Sergeant Lawson," he said quietly, "you need to come with me immediately. There has been an event." Maria's pulse stopped. The room felt suddenly narrower. She closed her eyes once, then opened them. Steady. Because something had followed her from her old world into this polished one, and it was about to change everything. The walls of the office felt smaller now, as more parents drifted inside, drawn by whispers of confrontation. Maria faced Principal Holbrook, but behind him murmurs swelled, nervous, defensive, entitled. The federal messenger waited silently in the corner, badge reflecting ambient daylight, not rushing her, but not vanishing either. Ethan stood closest to his mother, gaze torn between fear and awe, and Maria, still in uniform, felt like she was straddling two worlds, one that judged her, and one that needed her. Sergeant Lawson, a tall man in a suit, began. "I appreciate your service, but there's a distinction between battlefield honor and educational appropriateness." His voice carried the confidence of someone used to winning arguments with bank accounts. "We don't want to expose our children to traumatic narratives. They're simply not relevant to their lives." Maria turned toward him fully. "Respectfully, sir. Safety, sacrifice, and courage are relevant to everyone's Sep's life." A woman beside him crossed her arms. "We just teach our children not to resort to violence at all. It's Sep's better to live in peace." Maria gave a faint, sad smile. "I wish peace were something you can simply choose." Holbrook cleared his throat. Perhaps Ethan could avoid describing combat stories. Some students have the emotional tools. Maria's eyes flickered toward Ethan. He flinched, as if someone had just pointed at him physically. Before Maria could respond, another parent, an older gentleman with silver hair, spoke up. "My father was Navy," he said quietly. "He never apologized for serving. We respected him." The blonde mother scoffed. "This is different. Is it?" Maria asked softly. Her voice didn't rise, and that made every ear lean closer. She took a slow breath. "I didn't join the military for glory. I joined because when I was 19, my mother got sick, and there was no money. I had to choose between working 3 jobs or enlisting. One gave me a paycheck. The other gave me purpose. Her hand rested unconsciously over her scarred wrist, a mark barely visible beneath her sleeve. I served because I was needed, and because somewhere out there someone was in danger and didn't have the luxury of pretending the world was gentle. The blonde mother faltered, glancing away. Maria continued, eyes steady. When Ethan was 5, I missed his birthday. Not because I forgot, but because I was coordinating the evacuation of injured civilians from a conflict zone. I spent that night on a rooftop under mortar fire, thinking of him, and every time I thought I would die, I whispered his name. Ethan stared at her, stunned, shattered, quietly breaking open. Maria looked around the room, meeting each gaze. So Donstead, tell me my stories are inappropriate. My stories are the reason your children live in a country where they are allowed to grow up untouched by war. Silence rippled outward, slow, weighted, undeniable. The federal messenger shifted, but didn't interrupt. Holbrook looked genuinely conflicted. Sergeant, no one is dismissing your sacrifices, but surely you understand that your presence intimidates some families. Maria tilted her head. If my presence intimidates them, perhaps they should ask why. Because I didn't walk in here with aggression. I walked in with love for my son. Ethan whispered, voice trembling. Mom, I didn't know all that. I never knew. Maria knelt slightly, leveling with him. You don't need to be ashamed of me, Ethan, or afraid of standing alone among people who misunderstand you. His chin quivered. I not ashamed of you. I was ashamed of not knowing how to defend you. She touched his cheek. You don't defend me with arguments. You defend me by knowing who you are. Behind them, the silver-haired father spoke again. Maybe the real problem isn't Ethan's stories. Maybe it's our children not knowing real hardship. The blonde mother opened her mouth, then closed it. But the very moment compassion began to bloom, the messenger finally stepped forward. Sergeant Lawson, he said firmly, there's been a breach at a defense facility. Their are assembling personnel at Fort Belvoir. You are being recalled to active advisory status immediately. Ethan sessed, head jerked up.
She has to go back.
Maria Spey's heart cracked as she looked at him. I might. Holbrook blinked. But surely, you can be redeployed with no notice. The messenger cut him off. She on reserve alert status. She knew this possibility. Maria rose slowly, the weight of duty returning like a familiar ghost. The blonde mother suddenly stepped forward. Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say, thank you. Truly. Maria nodded slowly. The woman may never fully understand her life, but the gratitude was real. As Maria gathered her medals from the desk, Ethan Sepp's voice wavered. When will you be back? She didn't lie. She never had. I don't know. His eyes brimmed. I scared. Maria pulled him close, holding him with fierce tenderness. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what you must, even when you are. The messenger glanced at his watch. Urgency thickened the air. Maria stepped toward the door, uniform catching the light once more, a fragment of sun against shadowed wood and silent faces. She paused, looking back. At Ethan, at the principal, at the parents, at the school that would shape him after she was gone. And in that suspended moment, the room understood something profound. This was not a farewell of defeat, but of legacy. Then she turned and followed the messenger into the hall. And the last thing Ethan heard was the echo of her boots, steady, fading, as the future rushed toward them all. In the silence left behind, one question lingered like an unfinished prayer. What would become of Ethan, now that the world had called his mother back into its storm?